A husband has the right to go to the bishop with complaints about his wife. This is not a written rule. It is not formally codified. But it is understood, and it is practiced, and it is one of the most effective mechanisms of control available to a man who wants to ensure that his wife understands she is being watched, evaluated, and judged by forces beyond her ability to anticipate or influence. A husband can report his wife's behavior, her attitude, her compliance, her thoughts, her actions, and the bishop will listen. The bishop will intervene. The bishop will judge. My name is Hannah. I grew up Old Order Amish in Holmes County, Ohio. I married at 19 and left at 27. On this channel, I tell the stories that lived behind closed farmhouse doors, and today I want to talk about what happened when a husband decided to report his wife to the bishop, what behaviors were reportable, and what it meant to live under the constant threat of community intervention based on information that only your husband possessed and only your husband could decide to share. I became aware that Jonas had gone to the bishop when the bishop appeared at our house on a Tuesday evening. I had not expected him. I had not done anything that I thought would require the bishop's intervention. But there he was, and I understood in that moment that Jonas had reported something about me to him. What I did not understand initially was what had been reported. The bishop did not tell me directly. He asked me questions, carefully phrased questions that suggested he had been given certain information and was now trying to verify it. He asked me about my attitude toward my marriage. He asked me whether I was happy. He asked me whether I was content with my role. He asked me whether I was having any thoughts that were contrary to the teachings of the church. As I sat there, listening to these questions, I began to piece together what had happened. Jonas had told the bishop that he was concerned about my spiritual state. He had told the bishop that he thought I might be struggling with pride, with discontent, with thoughts that were not aligned with the teachings of our community. He had reported me. The thing that made this so devastating was that I had not told Jonas what I was thinking. I had not confided in him about my doubts or my struggles. What had happened was that Jonas had observed something in my behavior, some small change in my demeanor or my tone, and he had interpreted that as evidence of spiritual problems. And rather than talking to me about it directly, rather than asking me what was actually going on, he had gone to the bishop and reported his interpretation as fact. This taught me something crucial about the nature of marriage in my community. It taught me that there was no privacy. It taught me that my thoughts, my feelings, my internal experience was not actually internal. It was available to be observed, interpreted, and reported by the person closest to me. It was available to be the subject of community judgment. After the bishop left that evening, Jonas did not apologize. He did not explain what he had told the bishop or why. He simply returned to his normal demeanor, as though what had happened was not a significant breach of trust, not a violation of the privacy that I had assumed existed between a husband and a wife. What he had done was exercise his right. A husband has the right to monitor his wife's spiritual state and to report his concerns to the church. I began, after that incident, to understand what husbands were allowed to report. A husband could report his wife's level of submission to him. A husband could report whether his wife was being obedient. A husband could report whether his wife was showing respect for his authority. A husband could report whether his wife seemed content with her role. A husband could report whether his wife was complaining, expressing dissatisfaction, or showing signs of pride. A husband could report his wife's behavior at church. A husband could report whether his wife was paying attention during the service. A husband could report whether his wife seemed engaged or distant. A husband could report whether his wife was gossiping with other women or maintaining appropriate boundaries. A husband could report whether his wife was demonstrating humility or whether she seemed proud. A husband could report his wife's treatment of the children. A husband could report whether his wife was too lenient, too harsh, too indulgent, or too restrictive. A husband could report whether his wife was properly training the children in the ways of the church. A husband could report his wife's management of the household. A husband could report whether the house was clean enough, whether the food was adequate, whether the children's clothes were appropriate. A husband could report whether his wife was wasting resources or being frivolous. A husband could report his wife's attitude, and this was perhaps the most damaging category of reporting because attitude is so subjective, so open to interpretation, so impossible to defend against. A husband could report that his wife's attitude was wrong. A husband could report that his wife seemed resentful, ungrateful, or discontent. A husband could report that his wife's tone of voice suggested that she was not as committed to the marriage as she should be. What a husband could not report, in most cases, was something that would result in his own accountability. A husband could not be reported by his wife if he was cold or distant. A husband could not be reported if he was harsh or critical. A husband could not be reported if he was taking sexual advantage. The reporting system was designed to flow in one direction. It was designed to monitor and evaluate wives. I think about how this system of reporting functioned as a form of control. By knowing that anything I did, anything I said, anything about my demeanor or my attitude could be reported to the bishop, I became hypervigilant. I became focused on managing not just my behavior but my internal state, because my husband was apparently quite skilled at reading my internal state from my external presentation and reporting it. This created a situation where I could not have private thoughts. I could not feel frustrated and expect that frustration to remain private. I could not doubt and expect that doubt to remain internal. Everything was available to be observed, reported, and judged. After I left, I talked to other women who had experienced similar reporting. One woman told me that her husband had reported to the bishop that she was being prideful because she had suggested a more efficient way to manage the household. Another woman told me that her husband reported her to the bishop because she had been quiet and withdrawn for several days, and he interpreted that as evidence of a bad attitude. Another woman told me that her husband reported her because she had cried after finding out that her father was ill. Each of these women had been reported for things that were not actually wrong. They had been reported for being human. They had been reported for having emotions, thoughts, reactions that were completely normal and understandable, but because a husband had reported them, because the bishop had been told about them, they had become community matters, they had become evidence of spiritual problems that needed to be addressed. What I understand now is that this reporting system is not designed to improve marriages or help women. It is designed to ensure compliance. It is designed to make women understand that they're constantly being observed, that their thoughts are never private, that their feelings are subject to community judgment. It is designed to make women so fearful of being reported that they suppress their own emotions, their own doubts, their own authentic selves. I think about the terror of living in this situation. I think about never being able to be entirely myself, never being able to express my true feelings, never being able to expect that my private thoughts would remain private. I think about how this system strips away any sense of safety or sanctuary that a woman might have expected to find in her marriage or in her home. After I left the community, I had to relearn what privacy felt like. I had to relearn that I could have thoughts that did not need to be defended to anyone. I had to relearn that my emotional experience was my own, that it did not need to be explained or justified or reported to anyone. I had to learn that I was allowed to feel things without those feelings being the subject of community scrutiny. What I want to say to any woman in a conservative community who has been reported to the bishop, who has experienced the violation of having her private thoughts and feelings become the subject of community judgment, who has learned that there is no privacy in her marriage, who has become hypervigilant about her own behavior and emotional presentation because she knows she is being observed, is this. What has been done to you is a violation of trust. What has been done to you is a form of control, and it is not acceptable. Your thoughts are private. Your feelings are yours. Your internal experience does not belong to your husband and does not belong to the community. You have the right to feel frustrated, to doubt, to question, to struggle, without those feelings being reported and judged and made the subject of community intervention. If you are in a situation where you cannot trust that your private thoughts will remain private, where you know that anything you say or do or feel might be reported and used against you, you are not in a safe marriage. You're not in a situation that deserves to be called love. You're in a system of control. And you deserve something different. You deserve privacy. You deserve the safety of knowing that your internal life is your own. You deserve a partner who respects your thoughts and your feelings enough to keep them private, who does not run to authority figures to report your struggles, who trusts you enough to work through difficulties directly with you instead of involving the entire community. This is my story. If it stayed with you, tell me in the comments, and subscribe if you want to keep hearing the truth from behind the prayer cap.